The air in Johnson's diner was thick with the aroma of sizzling bacon and stale coffee, but a different kind of tension was simmering at table 7. A woman, her voice sharp enough to cut through the morning rush, was berating Maria, a young waitress, over an alleged mistake on her breakfast order. Every shouted word was a public jab, echoing off the checkered floors and chrome accents. Maria, usually quick with a smile and a witty retort, was utterly silent, her shoulders hunched, her gaze fixed on the floor. Her hands, calloused from years of carrying heavy trays, trembled slightly. The customer, unrelenting, continued her tirade, oblivious to the discomfort she was causing. Mark, a single dad enjoying a rare, quiet moment with his newspaper at a nearby booth, observed the scene. He had no idea this small act of intervention, this simple refusal to let injustice stand, would soon bring an entire community rallying to his and Maria's side, forever changing their lives and the very heart of that diner. He felt the injustice like a physical ache. The customer's voice rose to a shrill crescendo, demanding an apology and a full refund. Maria's face was a mask of humiliation, her uniform feeling suddenly too tight. The diner's usual chatter began to quiet, replaced by an uncomfortable hush as more eyes turned towards the spectacle. Mark watched, a knot forming in his stomach. The silence of the diner, usually a comfort, now felt heavy, amplifying the injustice. Maria's quiet suffering, a raw, visible vulnerability, struck a chord deep within Mark. It mirrored the silent battles he often fought, the quiet dignity he tried to maintain as a single father striving to provide for Lily, his 5-year-old daughter, who was happily coloring, oblivious to the brewing storm. Maria's usually bright eyes, now brimming with tears, spoke volumes of the unfairness she endured daily, perhaps even unseen battles beyond this moment. The customer, emboldened by Maria's silence, launched into an even more personal attack, questioning her competence and work ethic, her cruel words slicing through the already strained atmosphere. Mark's hands tightened on his newspaper, a counterpoint to the growing tension. A silent debate raged: intervene and risk conflict, or remain a silent witness. His gaze shifted to Lily, happily coloring, a symbol of the innocent world he aimed to protect. He knew he had to choose the path of courage, to be an example, even if she wouldn't fully understand it now. He couldn't let this injustice stand, not when he had the power to make a difference. Taking a deep, grounding breath, Mark pushed himself up from the booth. Each movement was deliberate, signaling not aggression, but an unwavering purpose that belied his quiet nature. The customer's shrill tirade faltered, her angry gaze now shifting, momentarily derailed by Mark's unexpected but calm appearance. Maria's head snapped up, her tear-filled eyes meeting his, a flicker of bewildered hope mixing with lingering apprehension. The quiet hum of the diner had now almost completely ceased, replaced by the hushed whispers of curious onlookers, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama. Mark's voice, though calm, carried across the suddenly silent room with an unexpected authority. "Excuse me," he began, his tone even and respectful. "I couldn't help but overhear. Would it be all right if I just had a look at the receipt? Perhaps there's a simple misunderstanding we can clear up together." His question, simple yet direct, hung in the air, a calm challenge to the escalating chaos. The customer scoffed, an incredulous sound, clearly annoyed by the interruption to her dramatic display. "Who do you think you are?" she spat, her anger now redirected, but Mark didn't flinch. He simply offered a small, reassuring nod to Maria, a silent promise that she wasn't alone, a quiet resolve in his own stance. He knew that sometimes the quietest voices hold the most power, especially when they speak for truth, and that this moment demanded it. With a steady, almost surgical hand, Mark retrieved the crumpled receipt that lay abandoned on the table, a flimsy testament to the customer's fury. The paper felt thin and fragile, much like Maria's composure. He unfolded it carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration, his eyes scanning the itemized list, comparing each line to the customer's heated claims. Maria watched him intently, her breath held tight in her chest, a fragile hope blossoming in her eyes. The customer, however, remained defiant, her arms crossed, a sneer playing on her lips, her confidence unwavering despite the intervention. "What are you going to do, sir? Prove my coffee wasn't decaf? This girl clearly can't do her job," she challenged, her voice dripping with disdain. Mark ignored her, his focus entirely on the small print, the numbers and names that held the key to the truth. A moment later, a faint but significant shift in his expression signaled a discovery. His gaze sharpened, finding exactly what he'd suspected. He looked up, his eyes meeting Maria's briefly, a silent message of vindication passing between them, a shared understanding. Then he turned back to the customer, his voice calm, but now imbued with an undeniable authority. "Ma'am," he began, holding up the receipt for all to see, "it seems there's been a slight oversight on your part." The customer's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of unease. The tension in the diner intensified, now a collective silent expectation of the truth. Mark's finger landed precisely on a line item, clear as day, undeniable. "It says here, ma'am, that your order was indeed placed as regular coffee. The alteration to decaf appears to have been made after the initial order was sent to the kitchen, and not by Maria." His words were not accusatory, merely factual, yet they hit with the force of a gavel. The customer's face, already flushed, deepened to a furious crimson. She stammered, attempting to invent an excuse, but the evidence was irrefutable, printed in black and white for all to see. Maria, her initial fear giving way to a quiet surprise, took a small, tentative step forward, her gaze fixed on the receipt. Her eyes held a deep gratitude, a silent thank you that resonated more powerfully than any spoken word. The ripple of whispers among the other diners grew louder, a wave of realization spreading through the room. Several patrons, sensing the unfolding drama, had already pulled out their smartphones, discreetly recording the scene. The subtle clicks and flashes were like tiny, insistent warnings. Just then, the swinging kitchen doors burst open and a figure emerged. Mr. Henderson, the diner's manager, a man whose stern demeanor was as famous as his greasy spoon's breakfast specials, strode purposefully towards the commotion, his brow furrowed with annoyance. He immediately assessed the scene, his eyes locking onto Mark and Maria, clearly assuming they were the problem, not the victim, completely misjudging the situation. Mr. Henderson, a man more concerned with appearances and maintaining order than uncovering truth, saw only a loud customer and a potentially disruptive patron, Mark. He bypassed Mark entirely, directing his immediate scolding attention to Maria with a dismissive wave. "Maria, what is going on here? We don't have time for these theatrics. The customer is always right." His voice boomed, completely overshadowing Mark's attempt to interject and present the actual evidence. Maria's face, which had just begun to show a glimmer of relief, crumpled again, her shoulders slumping in visible defeat. The manager's dismissive tone was a familiar blow, one she'd likely endured many times before. He hadn't even glanced at the receipt Mark was now holding out. He simply waved a hand, dismissing the physical evidence before him. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back." Henderson addressed Mark, his tone cold and authoritative, not bothering to ask for his side of the story. "This is a matter between our staff and our valued customer." The customer, observing this immediate favoritism, allowed herself a small, triumphant smirk. The manager's bias was palpable, a suffocating weight that settled over the diner, making the air feel heavy with injustice. Mark, however, refused to be silenced. His grip on the receipt tightened, his gaze unwavering as he met the manager's cold stare, realizing that this was no longer just about a coffee order, but about a fundamental principle of fairness and respect. The manager, Mr. Henderson, now fully committed to his biased narrative, turned his full wrath on Maria. His finger jabbed aggressively in her direction, his voice now a low, menacing growl. "Maria, this is unacceptable. You're creating a scene, upsetting our customers. You need to apologize immediately and ensure this never happens again, or I'll have to consider your position here." The threat hung heavy in the air, a cruel, public humiliation designed to break her spirit. Maria's head was bowed, her shoulders visibly trembling, trying to make herself as small as possible. The weight of the accusation, compounded by the manager's unwavering belief in the customer's version, was clearly crushing her. Mark felt a surge of indignation. This was beyond a simple misunderstanding. This was a deliberate attack on Maria's dignity and livelihood. He stepped forward, the crumpled receipt still clutched in his hand, a tangible piece of the truth. "Mr. Henderson, with all due respect, you haven't even looked at the evidence," Mark interjected, his voice firm, cutting through the manager's tirade. He extended the receipt again, a silent but powerful challenge. The customer, however, delighted in Maria's distress, offered a smug, self-satisfied smile, clearly enjoying the waitress's public reprimand. The manager, infuriated by Mark's persistence, glared at him, his face reddening. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a customer trying to defend an employee. "She has nothing to apologize for, Mr. Henderson," Mark stated, his voice resonating with an unshakable conviction. He held the receipt aloft, a silent banner of truth. "The evidence is right here. This customer changed her order after it was placed. Maria did nothing wrong." His words, though calmly delivered, were a direct challenge to the manager's authority, echoing through the stunned diner. Maria, hearing Mark's unwavering defense, slowly lifted her head. A subtle shift in her posture, a hardening in her eyes, showed a spark of defiance, a quiet strength rekindled by Mark's courage. She was no longer just a victim, she was someone being fought for. The customer, seeing her victory slipping away, huffed in frustration, her self-satisfied smirk replaced by a furious scowl. She started to protest again, but her words lacked conviction, overshadowed by Mark's clear articulation of the facts. The previously hushed murmurs of the diners now turned into more distinct whispers of agreement. The click of phone cameras grew more pronounced, no longer discreet, but openly capturing the unfolding confrontation. The manager, trapped between his established authority and the undeniable evidence, felt the pressure mounting. He glanced around nervously, realizing that his usual tactics of intimidation were failing, and that he was losing control of the narrative in front of a growing recording audience. His initial anger was now tinged with a dangerous mix of frustration and fear. The manager's face was now a mask of agitated fury, a thin sheen of sweat visible on his forehead. His gaze darted frantically between Mark and Maria, the weight of multiple eyes and recording phones making him visibly flustered. "You," he bellowed, pointing a shaky finger at Mark, "are disturbing the peace. And you," he swung his finger towards Maria, "are insubordinate. I am calling the police on you, sir, for harassment. And as for you, Maria, you're fired, effective immediately." His words were a desperate power play, designed to reassert his authority through sheer volume and intimidation. Maria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, tears instantly welling up again. The injustice of being fired for doing nothing wrong after years of loyal service was a cruel public blow. Mark's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with a cold resolve. He was prepared for this escalation, but seeing Maria's renewed distress fueled his determination. The customer, feeling vindicated, crossed her arms across her chest, a triumphant smirk returning to her face, clearly relishing the manager's drastic measures. The diner, once a place of everyday chatter, had descended into a tense silence, punctuated only by the manager's heavy breathing and the faint whir of phone cameras. This was the moment of public humiliation, not just for Maria, but for Mark, who now stood accused alongside her. They were in this together, facing the full, ugly force of unchecked authority. The stakes had never been higher. Just as the manager reached for his phone, ready to make good on his threat, a new sound cut through the suffocating silence. The unmistakable whoosh of the kitchen doors swinging open. All eyes snapped towards the entrance, expecting more drama, perhaps another exasperated employee. Instead, a figure emerged, calm and resolute amidst the chaos. It was Chef Anna, a dignified older black woman, the culinary backbone of Johnson's Diner for over 30 years. She wore her chef's coat with an air of quiet authority, a clean apron tied around her waist, and her hands, still faintly dusted with flour, wiped methodically on the fabric. In one hand, she held a small, handwritten order ticket. Her presence, so unexpected and utterly composed, instantly commanded the room. The manager, mid-sentence in his furious tirade, froze, his mouth agape, his phone still halfway out of his pocket. Maria looked up, her tear-filled eyes widening in surprise. Then hope. Mark, too, felt a sudden shift, a glimmer of possibility in the tense atmosphere. Chef Anna's gaze, steady and unflinching, swept across the scene, taking in Maria's distress, Mark's defiant stance, and the manager's blustering rage. Then her voice, though quiet, resonated with an undeniable power cutting through the thick tension. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her tone level, yet leaving no room for argument. "I believe there's something you need to see." The room fell absolutely silent, hanging on her every word. Chef Anna, with a quiet grace that belied the building tension, walked directly to the manager. She held out her handwritten kitchen ticket, a replica of Maria's order. "This, Mr. Henderson," she began, her voice calm but unwavering, "is the original order Maria sent to my kitchen. As you can see," she aligned her ticket perfectly with the crumpled receipt Mark held, pointing to identical details. "It clearly states regular coffee. It was only after this ticket left Maria's hand and went to the customer that the request for decaf was made, directly to the expediter, not Maria, and not through the proper channels." The proof was undeniable, staring the manager in the face. His complexion, already pale, now drained of all color, his bluster evaporating like smoke. The customer, caught in her own web of deceit, gasped, her face twisting in a desperate attempt to formulate a denial, but there was no escaping the truth. Chef Anna's calm, irrefutable evidence dismantled the entire false narrative, piece by piece. Maria, witnessing this powerful vindication, felt a wave of profound relief wash over her. A small, genuine smile touched her lips, a silent thank you to Chef Anna for her courage, and to Mark for his unwavering support. The manager, completely exposed, stumbled backward, visibly reeling from the revelation. The room held its breath, witnessing the dramatic shift in power. The air, once heavy with injustice, now crackled with the sharp edge of truth. This wasn't just about a coffee order anymore. It was about integrity, and the manager's was crumbling around him. The silence in the diner was deafening, broken only by the rapid, shallow breaths of the manager. His face, once stern and self-assured, was now a roadmap of regret and mortification. The anger that had fueled his bluster had evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard realization of his profound mistake and its very public exposure. He fumbled with his tie, trying to regain some semblance of composure, but his eyes darted nervously, unable to meet the gazes of his now judging customers. The customer, completely discredited and cornered, saw the tide had irrevocably turned. With a frustrated huff and a final, humiliated glare, she snatched her purse from the table, practically ran out the diner doors, disappearing into the bustling street. As the doors swung shut behind her, a wave of relief, then quiet triumph, swept through the diner. The subdued whispers swelled into murmurs of approval, and then, softly at first, a smattering of applause broke out, growing steadily louder. Diners, no longer discreetly, raised their phones higher, some smiling, clearly ready to share this moment of justice. Maria and Mark exchanged a look, a silent connection forged in shared adversity. Her eyes, no longer clouded by tears, met his with a deep, unspoken gratitude and a hint of quiet triumph. The tables had turned not with a bang, but with the undeniable power of truth, calmly and courageously presented. The manager, now shrinking under the collective gaze, knew he had to act, and fast, to salvage what little dignity remained. His voice barely above a whisper, the manager, Mr. Henderson, turned to Maria, his previous bluster replaced by a cringeworthy attempt at conciliation. "Maria, I'm truly sorry. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I was wrong." He stammered, his eyes darting to the floor, unable to meet hers. He then made a clumsy gesture towards a potential raise, a desperate attempt to appease her and silence the growing unrest. But Maria, her head now held high, her eyes clear and steady, met his gaze with a dignified calm. She was no longer the trembling waitress from moments before. She subtly shook her head, gently declining the implied offer. Her voice, though soft, carried a newfound strength and clarity. "Mr. Henderson," she began, "an apology is a start. But what I and every other employee here truly need is not just a raise. We need respect. We need to be heard. We need to know that we will be treated fairly and that our word will be trusted." Her words, simple yet profoundly powerful, resonated throughout the diner, a demand for systemic change, not just a personal handout. Mark stood beside her, a silent pillar of support, his admiration for her courage shining in his eyes. He knew this wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever felt unheard or disrespected in their workplace. The manager, utterly disarmed by her unwavering dignity and undeniable truth, could only nod, his face still etched with regret, a profound lesson sinking in. The applause from the diners grew louder, a chorus of agreement and affirmation. The story of Maria's quiet defiance and Mark's courageous intervention quickly spread beyond the diner's walls, fueled by the countless phone videos shared online. News vans soon lined the street, cameras flashing, eager to capture the powerful human interest story that had captivated the entire town. Outside, under the bright afternoon sun, Maria and Mark stood side by side, a picture of unexpected heroism, their faces reflecting a quiet strength. Maria, articulate and composed, spoke eloquently about the importance of respect and dignity in the workplace, her voice now reaching a much wider audience. Mark, ever humble, emphasized the simple principle of standing up for what's right, especially when someone cannot stand up for themselves, highlighting the ripple effect of small acts of courage. From inside the diner, the cheers of appreciative patrons could still be heard, a testament to the community's rallying support and newfound sense of empowerment. Lily, Mark's daughter, clutching her father's hand, waved happily to the cameras, oblivious to the profound impact her father's actions were having, yet sensing the joy and warmth around her. The manager, in a carefully worded public statement, promised a full review of staff policies and a commitment to fostering a truly respectful environment for all. It was a victory not just for Maria, but for countless others who had longed for a voice, a testament to the power of collective action and individual bravery. In the weeks and months that followed, Johnson's Diner underwent a remarkable transformation. The manager, humbled by the public outcry and the irrefutable evidence, not only kept his promise, but became a genuine advocate for his staff, implementing sweeping changes that fostered a culture of genuine respect and open communication. Maria, now seen as a beacon of strength and integrity, not only kept her job, but was promoted, becoming an informal advocate for fair treatment among her colleagues, her voice no longer stifled but amplified and truly valued. Mark, a quiet hero, returned to his life with Lily, his simple act of kindness echoing far beyond that crowded diner, inspiring countless others to speak up against injustice in their own communities. His courage had sparked a ripple effect, proving that profound, lasting change often begins with one person's refusal to be silent. This powerful story reminds us all that standing up for what's right, even in seemingly small ways, can create ripples of change that touch many lives and transform communities. If this story moved you, please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting tales of courage, integrity, and transformation. Your support helps us share these powerful narratives with the world, reminding us all of the incredible impact one person can make, one quiet act at a time.